Here are the top stories for today, June 8, 2021. President Rodrigo Duterte says the government can flex its arm in enforcing quarantine rules as some people continue to ignore health protocols, causing a surge in COVID-19 cases in some areas. Get your second dose. The government makes this call on Filipinos as some miss their second shot, as this will provide full protection against COVID-19. And what peace talks? The president says this will never succeed unless communist terrorist groups cease their attacks on government forces and civilians. And the Philippine Air Force gets another 5 Black Hawk helicopters from Poland, which are expected to boost its capability to perform various missions. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The government intends to calibrate its COVID-19 response if Filipinos continue to refuse to follow the minimum public health standards. During his weekly talk to the people, President Rodrigo Duterte said the government has the power to control the movement of the people.
As we go along in this journey, reading the pandemic from our country, we will adopt measures that would be commensurate to the gravity of the situation. We might calibrate our response to the intransigence that you will show. Depende sa ano ninyo. Kung talagang ayaw ninyong sumunod, then we have the power to control it actually.
Meanwhile, Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo suggested stiffer penalties for quarantine violators.
Kung ito pong taong ito, despite the fact na alam niya na nga ang pinagbabawal, ganun pa rin ang gagawin niya, pwede po siyang idemanda ng pag-resist o hindi pagsunod sa mga persons in authority. Pwede po natin gamitin yung Republic Act 11332. At ito po yung mandatory reporting of notifiable diseases and health events. Pag yung pong halimbawa, yung isang tao na alam niya na meron siyang sakit na coronavirus, alam niya, pumunta ho siya sa isang lugar na meron mga pagpupulong. At yung kanyang sakit ay nailipat at nahawa sa isang tao. Kung namatay, papasok lamang yun sa home site. Kung ito naman ay maselan na sugat o injury, maging reckless imprudence resulting to serious physical injury.
President Rodrigo Duterte renewed his call for the proper disposal of medical waste. This as reports have reached his office about the poor disposal of the hazardous waste. President Rodrigo Duterte emphasized the need to give attention to the rise of larger volumes of plastic waste in light of the global community celebration of World Environment Day. He urges hospitals and other healthcare establishments to dispose of it properly.
June 5, the global community celebrated World Environment Day to promote greater commitment to care our planet. Sadly, however, the COVID-19 crisis also gave a rise to plastic waste and pandemic. Balutin ninyo yung mga mga medisina, yung naturok na, saka yung mga sirens. Balutin ninyo, ibigay ninyo sa basurero. Alam nila kung ano lang gawin nila.
President Rodrigo Duterte appealed to Filipinos to find the time to get fully vaccinated against COVID-19. He said skipping the second shot may offer less protection against the virus. The president made the call after the health department reports that 19% of COVID-19 vaccine recipients missed their second shot. He also directed local officials to find out why first dose recipients had failed to get their second dose.
Alam mo, ang medisina nitong mga Sinovac, Sinopharm, and the rest, dito ngayon, which are available in the Philippines, they require a second dose, booster. At kayong iisa lang, kulang yan. Pakilinya lang uli for the second dose because ang protection ninyo is not complete without the booster.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III assured those who failed to get the second dose can still avail of their missed shots. Duque emphasized the need to become fully immunized against the risks of COVID-19 infection.
Yan naman pong mga hindi naturukan ng ikalawang dose ay pwede pa rin po na magpaturok. Sila lang po ay makipag-ugnayan sa kanila pong pamahalaan lokal at ang kanila pong mga City Health Office. Kailangan kumpletuhin ho natin para mataas ang level ng proteksyon na ibibigay po nito laban sa severe and critical COVID cases. Panlaban po na makakasiguro tayong maiwasan ang hospitalization at mahigit po sa lahat ay maiwas ang pagpanaw.
Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said the Philippines needs to procure more COVID-19 vaccines to inoculate minors and children. This as more companies express their intent to supply coronavirus jabs for children. Among these are China's Sinovac company and Pfizer-BioNTech. Meanwhile, Sinopharm and Moderna are studying the effectiveness of their jabs in children. For his part, Health Secretary Francisco Duque said the government will strictly follow the prioritization list for the COVID-19 vaccination program set by the World Health Organization or WHO.
Meron tayong tinatawag na yung tinatawag natin yung pediatric vaccination. May 39 million po na tayo na population diyan. At yan po ay ginawa po namin, ang implication niyan, we need to buy more vaccine. More or less 60 million. So, ang ginawa po natin, ngayon, ongoing po ang ating mga negotiation sa ating pharmaceutical companies at vaccine companies para at least mag-increase tayo from original 158 million to 202 million, kasama na po yung COVAX.
The government is open to giving incentives and privileges to Filipinos who have completed their COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said they are considering to relax some of the restrictions for fully vaccinated individuals, such as going out for the elderlies or doing away with the quarantine protocols for returnees from abroad.
Sa Israel, ang ginagawa nila, yung mga elderly na 65 and above, pagka once na na-vaccinate na, they can go to the to the different stores and they can go out. Tsaka nakita natin sa US, even yung mga baksinado, binibigyan ng tinatawag nating raffle. And even dito sa atin, nakikita natin may mga LGUs tayo na binibigyan ng motivation, na binibigyan ng ayuda, yung mga ibang mga citizens na nagbabakuna.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Duque said the vaccine expert panel and the technical advisory group of experts are yet to study on easing of restrictions for those who are fully vaccinated.
Pag-aaralan po ito ng ating vaccine expert panel and technical advisory group of experts kung ano pa ang pwede pong mga luwagan na mga restrictions. Ganun pa man, hindi rin natin pwedeng isang tabi ang mga napatunayan ng epektibong pamamaraan katulad ng face shield, face mask, social distancing.
Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque floated the possibility of entering into an agreement with other countries so that individuals can easily prove their vaccination status.
Sinabi po ng IATF na yung mga nabakunahan na sa Pilipinas, pag sila'y nag-abroad, pagbalik nila, kinakailangan 7-day quarantine pa rin po sa facilities na hindi naman po i-require ang PCR. Ang personal kong pananaw bilang isang nagturo po ng international law sa UP ng 15 taon, baka kinakailangan magkaroon ng isang international na kasunduan kung dapat magkaroon ng standard na vaccination certificates. Nang sa ganun, hindi po problema ang pag-authenticate kung totoo ba o peke yung vaccination card. Pero dito po sa Pilipinas, nagsisimula pa lamang tayo ng A4. So siguro naman po, kung nakapag-antay naman tayo ng mahigit isang taon bago dumating ang bakuna, makapag-aantay po tayo ng konti pa pong panahon para magkaroon po ng pagkakataon ang buong mundo na magkaroon ng kasunduan kung paano nga bang gagawin sa mga taong nabakunahan na.
As the government started the inoculation of those in the A4 category, the Health Department recommends prioritizing them by age. This means older workers will get the jab first.
As to the stratification according to age, nakalagay po yan dun sa guidelines, no? And accordingly, parang dun sa IATF resolution, nakalagay po dyan that the workers, no, can be stratified, may be stratified according to age, no? Para align din tayo dun sa vulnerability or the risk na atin pong hinaharap ngayon dito sa COVID-19. Nakasaad po dyan that they can stratify from the oldest until the youngest.
Meanwhile, PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar welcomed the start of inoculation for the country's economic frontliners, including media workers. He said media workers have also been venturing out into the field to get accurate information on the pandemic. Andanar said the start of the COVID-19 vaccination to the A4 priority category is important to ensure the seamless and uninterrupted functioning of society. The government says the country is already close to beating the COVID-19 pandemic. This as more vaccine supplies are now arriving in the country. As such, the vaccination program of the government is now moving at a faster rate with the inoculation of those in the A4 category. President Rodrigo Duterte said the vaccination of economic frontliners or those in the A4 group is the result of the national government's aggressive efforts to secure sufficient doses from different manufacturers. The A4 priority group will be focused on approximately 13 million additional workers in Metro Manila and NCR+, 8 composed of Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, Bulacan, Batangas, Cavite, Laguna, Pampanga, and Rizal. Still to come, from Poland to the Philippines, the Philippine Air Force has 5 new Black Hawk helicopters. And boosting exports, the Agriculture Department is in talks with Egypt to open its market for Filipino products. Details ahead, this is the PNA Newsroom. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
You are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective. I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work. The Philippines now has 5 new Black Hawk helicopters. These are part of the 16 helicopters ordered by the country from Polish company Polski Zakłady. Lieutenant Colonel Maynard Mariano, spokesperson of the Philippine Air Force, said the recent arrival of the 5 Black Hawks will further boost the heli-lift capability of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and will help the government deliver more services in more areas in less time. 6 Black Hawk helicopters were earlier delivered to the country in November last year. In the past few months, the Black Hawks transported vaccines and personal protective equipment sets to the remotest areas of Batanes, Bicol, and other parts of the country. Bacolod City has imposed an earlier curfew and ban on selling and drinking liquor in public. Meanwhile, in Cotabato City, authorities are establishing limited entry and exit points to control the flow of residents. More on this in today's Provincial Roundup from Lade Cabagani.
The city government of Bacolod has enforced an early curfew hours from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. from the previous 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Exemptions shall be made for workers on night shifts, media practitioners, public emergencies, and those requiring medical assistance. The city has also suspended the sale, serving, and consumption of liquor and alcoholic beverages in public places. These precautionary measures were implemented to curb the recent rebound of COVID-19 infections in the city. On June 6 alone, Bacolod lagged 128 new cases and 1 death, and also 53 recoveries. The latest 128 cases are all local transmissions. In Cotabato City, the city government began implementing Monday the one entry, one exit passageway plan for areas with a high number of COVID-19 cases. Villages with high COVID-19 cases will use one road in going in and out of their communities. Those below 18 years old and above 60 strictly must also stay home, while the No Movement Sunday is still in effect. Meanwhile, local government of Pagadian City is offering prizes through a pabunot promo to entice senior citizens to submit to the government's vaccination program. This after some members of the A2 priority group expressed hesitance to be vaccinated. Mayor Samuel Cos said senior citizens will be made to draw lots after they were inoculated to determine the prize that will be received. He said he asked different local business establishments like bake shops, fast food chains, pastries, hardware, and other stores to provide the needed prizes. The City Health Office, he said, targets to inoculate 14,000 senior citizens against COVID-19. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Lade Cabagani.
The Department of Labor and Employment plans to increase the cap on overseas deployment of nurses to 10,000 from the current 5,000. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III said they want to ensure that the country has an adequate supply of nurses and healthcare workers amid the prevailing pandemic. Once it is made possible, they can recommend to the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases and eventually to the President to have an exemption on the deployment cap. At the same time, Bello added that the sending of nurses to the United Kingdom is allowed after the Philippine government granted its request to be exempted from the deployment limit. Aside from the UK, he said, Germany is also requesting an exemption from the deployment limit. On the other hand, Bello clarified that Filipinos who are balik manggagawa or those vacationing in the country are not covered by the cap. The Philippine Statistics Authority in Negros Oriental has exceeded its target number of registrants in the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys, from February to May this year. The PSA has registered about 486,000 individuals for the Step 1 and 2 process as of May 31. This is way above the PSA's target of 444,579. PSA Negros Oriental Chief Ariel Fortuito attributed the accomplishment to the fast rollout of the enlistment process in the different towns and cities, as well as for institutions that are now accommodated for the national ID system registration. Meanwhile, the PSA chief is optimistic that they will be able to reach or go beyond another target from June to December this year, which is over 854,000 individuals. The Department of Agriculture is in talks with Egypt to open up market access for Philippine products. Agriculture Secretary William Dar and Egyptian Ambassador to the Philippines Ahmed Sheikh Habeldin met online on Monday to discuss plans for a possible exchange of agricultural goods between the two countries. Both are eyeing future cooperation for the promotion of products such as desiccated coconut, tuna, bananas, and coconut oil. Dar said the exchange will boost agricultural development and provide food processing and logistics support to the planned agribusiness corridor in New Clark City in Tarlac. Back in 2019, or before the COVID-19 pandemic struck, the Bureau of Plant Industry visited Egypt's production areas and processing and packing houses of specific crops, such as citrus and grapes, as part of the risk assessment process. The work plan for the entry of Egyptian citrus has been prepared by BPI. Up next, no end to atrocities. Government troops seize anti-personnel mines of the New People's Army in Masbate. And the Palace takes pride in the victor of Filipina golfer Yuka Sasso in the U.S. Women's Open. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Desperation over the growing numbers of surrenderers has prompted the Communist Party of the Philippines' New People's Army to attack civilians with anti-personnel landmines. AFP Southern Luzon Command Chief Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr. made the statement as he condemned the landmine attack in Masbate on June 6 that killed Far Eastern University football player Keith Absalon and his cousin and wounded a minor. Parlade labeled as desperate the latest atrocity by the CPP-NPA to reverse the 117 surrenderers suffered in Bicol and Southern Tagalog in the past 2 months. Another sign of desperation is the series of ambushes conducted against police and military units going about their mandate in Mindoro and Quezon. Parlade added that NPA rebels are panicking as they are losing many of their comrades and top cadres. For his part, President Rodrigo Duterte said no peace talks can ever succeed unless the NPA stops attacking government forces and civilians. Duterte made this statement as he condemned the ambush of a unit of the 85th Infantry Battalion by NPA rebels in Buena Vista, Quezon Province on Saturday. He said he could not understand why the NPA would attack soldiers who were in the town to distribute food aid and other needs in the middle of a pandemic. Duterte previously held a series of peace negotiations with the National Democratic Front, but was forced to terminate the talks following the relentless NPA attacks against government troops and civilians. The hunt is on against communist terrorists behind the anti-personnel landmine blast in Masbate City over the weekend. Government troops clashed with fleeting NPA rebels in Barangay Mapiña and seized assorted landmines at the encounter site. Checkpoints have been put up in Barangay Kinamaligan and Bayumbong to stop the fleeing communist terrorists. The mine blast last Sunday killed the Far Eastern University football player Keith Absalon and his cousin and wounded another family member. Meanwhile, the military condemned the landmine blast committed by the New People's Army in Legazpi City on Sunday. 4 civilians, including an 11-year-old girl, were wounded when anti-personnel mines planted by the rebels exploded in an upland village road. More than 7 hours earlier, a Globe cell site in the village was set on fire by the same group of NPA rebels that planted the mine along the road. The Army's 9th Infantry Division said the incident was an NPA tactic to step up their extortion activities and a divisionary strategy by setting up anti-personnel mines against responders. The use of APMs is a violation of the international humanitarian law and the 1997 Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention. In continued efforts to pursue peace and development, the government launched a mobile rice mill to provide livelihood for former combatants of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. More on this from Claire Dighe.
The government, through the joint partnership of the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, and the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, or OPAP, launched the Mobile Rice Mill Project at Camp Bilal in Munay in Lanao del Norte and Camp Bushra Sumurang in Butig in Lanao del Sur. It is a socio-economic project of DTI to create economic opportunities for the commissioned Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, combatants and their families in Bangsamoro communities.
Mandato po sa DTI, paano tayo makakreate ng trabaho at makapagturo tayo ng negosyo para tayo ay magkaroon ng kabuhayan.
Makatoman shared that they are committed to discuss other projects that can help boost the livelihood in the communities. MILF Northwestern Mindanao Front Commander Camp Bilal Chairman and Parliament Member Abdullah Makapar, or commonly known as Commander Bravo, conveyed his gratitude to the government for the project implemented in their community. He expressed his commitment to support the development and to maintain peace and order.
Ako rin, kasamahan po ninyo sa ating gobyerno para paunlarin at panatiliin ang ating ekonomiya. I-maintain po namin ang peace and order dahil kung walang peace and order, walang development.
Meanwhile, MILF Northeastern Mindanao Front Commander and Camp Bushra Sumurang Chairman Basit Abbas, also known as Commander Janati Mimbantas, thanked for implementing projects under the normalization track of the peace process.
Today is very significant and historical because it is a reflection or combination of our noble endeavors and sacrifices to attain just and lasting peace and development.
For PNA Newsroom, Claire Giga of the Philippine Information Agency, Iligan City Information Center.
The Interagency Council Against Trafficking is looking into the recent mass transfer of members of the Bajau ethnic group to Manila. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara said persons who paid for the travel will be investigated on by the National Bureau of Investigation, a member of IACAT. The 303 indigenous peoples members, 110 of them minors, were rescued on Friday at the Manila North Harbor. They underwent antigen swab tests for COVID-19 and were temporarily sheltered in Quezon City. The IACAT arranged for their return to Zamboanga. The incident was the latest in a series of reported movement of indigenous peoples by an unknown sponsor whom authorities are investigating. On May 5, the police rescued 18 Bajau passengers being transported at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport Terminal 3. Another 6 Bajau passengers left Zamboanga for Manila by plane on May 30, but were intercepted at the Mactan Cebu International Airport in Lapu-Lapu City. Malacanang on Monday congratulated Filipino teenager Yuka Sasso for her historic win in the 76th U.S. Women's Open Golf Championship at the Olympic Club in San Francisco, California. In a statement, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque praised Sasso for having brought honor to the Philippines. Roque recalled how President Rodrigo Duterte met Sasso at Malacañang Palace when she was awarded a presidential citation after winning the gold medal in the 18th Asian Games in Indonesia. The Philippine consulate in San Francisco also issued a congratulatory message for Sasso on its official Twitter account. Sasso bested Japan's Nasa Hataoka in a sudden death playoff to become the second teenager to win the U.S. Women's Open. She is provisionally qualified for the Games as she is currently ranked 22nd in the Olympic golf rankings, where the top 60 will earn tickets to Tokyo. The local government of Cagayan de Oro will celebrate Philippine Independence Day and Charter Day anniversaries this year, despite being under Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine or MECQ. Mayor Oscar Moreno said it will proceed with the commemoration of Himugso, which will begin on June 12, Independence Day, and culminate on June 15 for the 71st founding anniversary of the city. Moreno stressed that they can't cancel or set aside Himugso because these are important events for the country and the city. Last year, city organizers programmed Himugso using the online platform. As the country celebrates Independence Day, Moreno urged the public to use independence to be brave, especially in solving the problem brought about by COVID-19. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. President Rodrigo Duterte says the government can flex its arm in enforcing quarantine rules as some people continue to ignore health protocols, causing a surge in COVID-19 cases in some areas. Get your second dose. The government makes this call on Filipinos as some miss their second shot, as this will provide full protection against COVID-19. And what peace talks? The president says this will never succeed unless communist terrorist groups cease their attacks on government forces and civilians. And the Philippine Air Force gets another 5 Black Hawk helicopters from Poland, which are expected to boost its capability to perform various missions. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day. Stay safe.